Hello, crafty friends. I'm back. Have you missed me? I've been busy studying, and finally semester is over, and I've got time to be back making videos again. I'm really happy. The hero of today's cards are some fancy script layered dies. I'm going to use the two that say joy and peace today. I also have them that say thanks and hello. So if you're not making Christmas cards, these ideas would still work just fine. These two papers come from the Jolly Holidays Basics 6x6 paper collection, and I've chosen two fairly plain papers from that collection, although their colours are quite rich. The dies come in two parts, the word and a background die. First of all, I'm going to cut the words from some shimmer cardstock, and then I'm going to tape the two pieces together so that I have a fairly even border all around the word. And once I've trimmed my papers down to card sized, I'm making 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cards today. Then I'm going to add my sentiment to the front of that. I'll do that for the peace and the joy and run that through my die cutting machine. This will give me some inside pieces which I'm going to save for later, the words, and also a very thin outline which we're going to use first. I'll put aside that word joy and the word peace for the second set of cards. Next, I'm going to use some double-sided adhesive and cut out just the outline. This way I'll have a nice piece of sticky paper to reconstruct my sentiment. I'll peel off that front backing paper so that I have a sticky front, and then adhere my pieces. I'll start with the outline because I can line that up against the outside of that background die, and then add the word into the middle. A couple of my outline pieces, like the centre of that Y, needed just a little bit of tweaking to line up perfectly. Then I'll replace those middle pieces again, and the sentiment is ready to go. I've put some glue onto the back of the word joy, and I'm just lining up my patterned paper so I know exactly where it's going to go on the card. Even once I've stuck it down, because I've used a wet glue, I can move the whole thing around until I'm really happy with its position. Now let's have a play. I'm going to use up some things from around my crafty space to make a shaker card. First of all, some old packaging for the window. I'm going to adhere that with some double-sided tape because if I use a wet glue, that plastic will warp. And then next, I'm going to make my shaker frame. This time it's really important that there are no gaps around the window that my sequins and shaker elements can escape from. I found a few bits and pieces around the place that I'm going to use as my shaker elements. Some seed beads, some sequins, and a few gold stars from our mixed star pack. I need to line this card up really exactly, so instead of putting those shaker bits onto the front of my window, I'm putting them down on top of the word joy so that I can very, very carefully line up my top panel and see through the window to get it perfectly in place. I'll do the same thing for the peace card, except this time choosing some different colours of sequins, and then both of my shakers are done. But what we have left is those words, the word peace and the word joy. So I'm going to use a couple of different techniques to make 2 more cards. We've moved the camera over so that you'll be able to see these yellows against the white. You can see the names of these inks on the lid. However, that last one is supposed to be squeezed lemonade. And I suspect there's been some kind of re-inking drama at some point, because that colour is not squeezed lemonade. So I'm not sure what happened there. However, what I have is a mix of yellows. And once I've smushed those onto my craft mat, I'm going to dip a piece of watercolour paper into that. It's important that it's watercolour paper. Regular paper won't stand up to this. I'll dry that off, and then once I've got it all dry, I'll dip it again. The first time I dipped, I smushed it around to get good coverage. But this time, and my third dipping, I'm just going to fairly well just press it down and lift it straight off again so that I get some spatters rather than an all-over coverage. I'll dry that off again and just repeat it until I've either run out of ink or I'm happy with my card. Once I've done that, I'm going to make some more spatters, this time lighter, by spraying some water into my hand and flicking it all over my page. I'll leave that to sit for exactly as long as it takes me to go and find that piece of paper towel. I think I cut about 10 seconds of footage from this little section, so you know, a little bit. And then I'll come back and dab off the extra ink, and you can see that paper towel turning bright yellow where the colour has lifted off. Now I'm going to use this little Baubles with Bows die set, and I'm going to cut some baubles. I'll cut a whole bunch from this paper and we'll use them to make 2 cards. I want some texture on my background, and so I'm choosing a couple of different embossing folders, Leafy Garden and Ben's Plaid. These are both 3D embossing folders, so I'm running them through my die cutting machine with a very light sandwich. I'll glue those to my background panels, and then I'll lay out my Christmas baubles in a way that pleases me and add my sentiments. I'm going to treat the joy and the bauble as one sentiment, and so I'll take that word joy off, glue it up, and then stick it down in a completely different place to where it was, and I have to deal with that in a minute. I'm going to pop everything up with foam tape, but because the height will be slightly different, I'm just adding a few scrap pieces of my yellow paper to the word joy, so that it's got the same number of layers as the part that's on the bauble. I'm using Express It foam squares in this case, and where the square was going to be a little bit too big, I just cut in from the side while it's still on the backing paper and use a half square. And now you can see me trying to deal with the fact that the joy is not where I thought it was, and I have to redesign my card. You can see the embossing folded texture there. I'm going to do the same thing for the peace card with one small difference, and that is that I've adhered the word peace to a background. So I use the outside die to cut that. Also, I've learnt my lesson from the first card, and this time I'm going to use some press and seal, so that once I've got a design I like, it can't move. Once again, I'm putting a few pieces of my card in some spots that would sit a bit lower, and then I'm adding some foam squares to the whole thing. I'm going to peel the backs off everything except the sentiment, because I need to still put some glue in between that layer. Once I've removed those little background squares, I can stick my sentiment down and then just fold it up. I'll put a little bit of glue in the middle, peel off those last backings, and stick down my sentiment. Now, every year, for quite a few years, I've used the same sentiment set, and I'm really pleased to say that it's still available. The main reason I use it is so that every year in my videos I get to say crisp Christmas sentiments. Something about that phrase makes me happy. The sentiments come in black and white, but I've actually done a little bit of embossing myself to get that gold, and I was doing my best to make my own gold sentiments. There you have it, 4 different cards using those sentiment dies as the hero. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed being back in my crafty space. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'm going to leave you with some pictures of the completed cards, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye for now.